Welcome back to the Boundary Corner podcast, along with my partner, Brian Siegler. I am Curtis Wilson, and this episode is brought to you by Dr. Lord Jeremy Counts at the Main Street Pharmacy in Blacksburg. If you love this podcast, the Hokies, the town of Blacksburg, make sure you are supporting Main Street Pharmacy when you get to town.
Whether you need prescriptions, a tube of toothpaste, or just want to say hello, let Jeremy and his team take care of you. The money you spend at Main Street Pharmacy goes towards the things you support. So next time you're in Blacksburg, head to 301 South Main Street. Buddy, a little tough coming off of that close out there, but we got a big one tonight. It's gonna be fun. It's not gonna all be doom and gloom.
Not all doom and gloom. Going to be a lot of fun. Someone we've been talking about getting on the pod for quite a while now, and let's sort of waste no time. Let's introduce him here. Basically, this guy, young guy, great writer for Sons of Saturday, great writer for The Key Play, and a Virginia Tech graduate of 2021. We're excited to have him on. And tonight we bring on Shelton Moss to talk a little bit of everything with us. Shelton, good evening, sir. How are you today?
Hello, gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be on. I wish I was in a slightly better mood after a Hokies win, but tough loss tonight. I'm sure we'll talk about it. But still, it's good to be on. I'm always happy to talk with you guys.
Yeah, tough one. The close out there. There was that little run, that 9-0 run that took a game where we were right there the whole way, shooting well, and then just had a tough time getting it to go in the basket there at the end, and really a rough night on defense as well.
Real night on defense, man. I mean, I've been looking at the stats here. Where they shoot, Miami shot 66% from 2 and 42% from 3. It's not going to get it done.
Yeah, 42% from 3, over 80% from the line. They out-rebounded the Hokies. Slight edge. The turnovers that were at 14 to 11, not a big deal. But the rebounds, to me, were the real killer tonight. I mean, you're talking +6 for them in the category. And those 3 threes in that consecutive stretch, Tech goes up 1 off a free throw. I think it was Poteet that hit it, or Basile. And they hit the free throw. We're up 1. I can't remember either. It's. I was putting a kid to bed while watching it. It's tough sometimes. Seriously, and then it's like bam, 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 and I think it's just. I said it in the first half too. I was putting another child to bed. It's 16-8, and I come back and we're down like 6, and it's like, Sheldon, let's just talk about this game and just some stuff in general. What is it about these stretches where we see out the gate hot tonight, 16-8, and then the next thing you know, it's this 5 to 7 minutes of cold. What do you see for that when as you've been watching this team all year, what are the frustrations with it?
Yeah, I mean, I try not to overreact too much just because, it is college basketball. Like, it's a game of runs. You're going to go on hot streaks. You're going to go on cold streaks, and that just happens. But I don't know. I mean, obviously, Mike runs a very motion-oriented offense. So, sometimes maybe the ball gets stuck. Sometimes they're not, running the actions the way they need to be. They're not fighting through screens. There's a lot of detail that goes into it, and sometimes the execution just isn't there. So, we shoot a lot of threes. I know we're not shooting as many threes as we did, last year, and I don't think we're relying on the 3 as much as people think. But look, if you're going to shoot the threes, and sometimes they're not going to fall, so you got to find other ways to score. And I think, Basile, physicality has been an issue this season. I think he's been better the last couple games, as we saw ACC Player of the Week this week. So he's gotten better there. But for the most part, I think they kind of miss Aluma, just kind of what he was able to do in the post last season. Not quite the same player, Basile, that is, as number 22. So, I mean, offense was good tonight. I mean, you can't complain. I think I saw a stat on Twitter that Tech was the first team in the country this season to lose a game where they shot 50, 40, 90, meaning 50% from the floor, 40% from 3, 90% from the free throw line. So they were the first team in the country to lose a game this season shooting that split. So I just, the snake bit doesn't even begin to describe it, man. This has been a tough season.
What are the luck metrics for this Hokies basketball team this year?
I mean, I can check it. The last time I checked, they were like bottom 20 in the country.
It makes sense.
We are bottom 20 in the country this year in luck in terms of KenPom. Now, if you want me to, get into the weeds of that, like, I don't know, maybe I could. I just think, we haven't been great closing out games. We haven't played well down the stretch. I don't know if it's, so much a coaching issue as maybe it is an execution issue, but this team just can't close out the close games.
Yeah, they definitely struggled. I mean, whether it's sometimes a cold streak, sometimes sloppy passing, and execution on the offensive end, sometimes, just a bad rotation on defense, and they are giving up some big open shots to guys that are at that moment hot, like Mac was tonight. So it's just kind of been a little bit of everything at those key moments of the games. But let's turn back the clock a little bit here. We got a blowout win against Syracuse on Saturday. Where do you think this team stands after Syracuse, after Miami, at this moment in terms of chances to make the NCAA tournament?
Sure. So I think this loss tonight definitely changes the complexion considerably. I know one game isn't, too critical, but coming to this game, I was looking at a site called Bart Torvik, which does some NCAA projection simulations, and they gave us a 43% chance of making it before this game. So with the Miami loss, maybe that's down to like 37, 36, somewhere in that range. I think that's pretty reasonable. The problem is you're 3-8 in the ACC. It's a down year for the league. You have to be UVA is a must win on Saturday. Like, you cannot lose that game and make the tournament, unless you want to get an at-large again and try to win the whole thing. But they got to win that game. I mean, they would have to go. What is it, like 9-1, 9-2? I don't know how many games they have left. I guess they got 9 games left now, so maybe like 7-2, 8-1. I mean, that's a really tough ask. So like I said, I try not to overreact to a single game, but it's like. It's more so the fact that you started the season 3-8 and put yourself in such a tough spot rather than just this one loss tonight. I mean, Miami's a good team. They're going to play good basketball. They got shot makers. They got playmakers. But it's just the fact you started so poorly. You put yourself in such a bad position, and that seems to be a recurring theme with this team.
All right. So here let me preface this, Sheldon. We were talking before you hopped on with us, and Brian said beat UVA, then we have to beat BC, Notre Dame, Georgia Tech, Pitt, Louisville, Florida State. That's 7.
Yes.
So are you saying like either you have to beat Miami or Duke along with the UVA win Saturday to have any shot?
UVA is a must win. I just don't see how you can lose that game and make it, because like if you lose it, like you would have to go like 9-0 the rest of the way, and that's not even a guarantee to get you in. So I just think you have to win that game, and after that, Duke, that's gonna be a really tough game. Like if they beat Duke and UVA, I mean they're in business, but that's a really tough ask. It just goes back to the bad start. You can't 1-7 every year and expect to be in a good spot.
Yep. Yeah, definitely can't dig a hole in January like we've done back-to-back seasons and expect anyone to do you any favors. And I will say, the committee might give a little bit of credence this year more than they gave last year just because of Couture being out and looking at that over that 4-game stretch. But I still think we still dug ourselves too much of a hole at this point where we really have to almost be perfect the rest of the way, save for maybe one game, to really feel like you're secure heading into that selection.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and to your point, just to make a quick point, also the non-conference schedule, like non-conference resume was awesome. I mean, they beat Penn State, they beat Oklahoma State. Obviously, UNC was a conference game, but back in December. That's why it's so disappointing, because if Tech went 11-9 with a couple of good wins in this conference schedule, they're a shoo-in for the tournament with their non-conference resume. But they just fell apart. It's tough.
It's not like it was last year where the non-conference hurt the team. This year it actually boosted it. But let's be honest about that non-conference in some of those early games. 11-1, 12-1 in non-conference. But there were cracks there. There were, we saw it. To us, it was always the 3-point shooting. Because I told Brian, I said, we can't live and die shooting 29, 28% from 3. 35, 36, there's a chance. Was there anything else you noticed in those early wins? The Penn State win, the win over ODU, the Oklahoma State win. Was there anything you noticed statistically that said, if that keeps trending, what's going to happen is going to happen?
Yeah, so statistically, I think the 3-point shooting was abnormally bad. Like, it was bad against Penn State. It was bad against ODU. A couple weeks ago, I was looking at some numbers where I found that Virginia Tech's current 3-point percentage as a team would rank the lowest of any Mike Young team since 2011. So I think that kind of says a lot. Like they're just not clicking for whatever reason, and I don't know if it's maybe like lesser quality of looks, or they're just not getting the ball to the right spot. But yeah, just 3-point shooting for whatever reason has not been there. I know it's kind of obviously improved the last few games. I'm sure they'll get they'll rise as the season progresses. But yeah, just the weird 3-point shooting. Padula's kind of fell off a little bit. Yeah, I never really honestly. I never could have imagined that losing Hunter Couture would have had such a drastic impact. I know it's not in me to make excuses, but it's like when you start the season 11-1 and then you lose all 5 games without a guard like Couture, who granted he's not he's a good player, but he's not like MVP of the league or anything. I mean, you lose all those games with him, defense just completely falls apart. You just can't beat any of those teams. It's like what happened. Like I think it kind of shows the value he has, but it's also like, man, like why are we so dependent on one player? That's kind of what I want to know.
Yeah, it's interesting because we've had rotations where Hunter's been off the floor in the past that hasn't impacted as much as it does. It seems like with this rotation this season, he missed a decent number of games in that stretch. What is it do you think about his skill set that this team kind of leans on, and what it was missing when he was out?
First of all, he's a great screen setter. He's a great cutter. I do film reviews all the time for the Key Play, and when I'm going back and watch the game, it's like almost every single time that Tech runs a beautiful offensive set or an offensive action, Couture's in the middle of it. Because he's the one setting the screens, and there is a very much a precise art to screen setting. The way he cuts without the basketball, the way he moves without the basketball, the way he passes, and Mike Young said the way he receives the ball, another kind of minute detail there, but the way he catches the ball, which obviously the forearm fracture kind of hampered. And then also his defense. He's a very good defender. He has good footwork. He's hard to, kind of body up and get past. He doesn't foul very much. He doesn't bite for dumb shot fakes. And then the shooting obviously kind of himself. He's a guy that can go off for 6 threes in one night. He's a good shooter, but also a high volume shooter, which is very rare. He's shooting 40% from 3 on a very high volume, and I think that's one of the best marks in the country if you look at his attempts. So he just does everything, like all those little things, and the things you can see in the box score and the things you don't see in the box score. He just does everything.
Yep, it's true. He does everything, and the defense. You could probably tell this to me. Where is he as far as taking charges this year? Even with 4 games missed, it felt like the early part of the season, every game he got 2 or 3 charges taken, which is crazy. But again, that's great position defense. That's great being in the right spot. And so many times just doing that, it helps. What it helps in general is the other team now is not going to attack him that way. So it's going to be easier for the rest of the team because they know they're not going to attack him that way. He's already drawn a charge. They can't get good shots off. So a lot of easy things. Let's pivot to something else, though. Let's talk about minutes. Now, Darius Maddox missed tonight's game as he did Saturday's game, so he's not been in a while. But kind of starting with the Duke game, we saw his minutes get significantly cut. He only had 6 minutes in that Duke game, where Kidd and Collins, the 2 primary guys off the bench, got 20 and 22. Poteet was at 6. And before that, though, he had always been up there. And for some reason this year, we know he's a good player, but for some reason this year, he just could not find it. Do you think, is he going to come back? Have you heard anything? Is he coming back? Is everything okay? Because I think that's the first one is he's not there. If he's there, you could say maybe he's sick, maybe he hurt something, but he's just not on the bench. And, we all want to make sure he's okay before anything else.
Yeah, so I know absolutely nothing about his status with regards to returning to the team. I know it's a family matter. It seems pretty serious if we're to take Mike Young at his word, which I will. As far as his playtime, which you mentioned, I think the issue with Maddox is that he's not a very physical driver. He has trouble sort of attacking the rim because he's kind of has a thin frame and just doesn't really seem to be doesn't really know what he's doing all the time. Kind of awkward when he wants to finish. So if he's not driving the basketball, then he has to shoot threes. But his 3-point shot hasn't been there this year. So instead, he's settling for mid-range jumpers, which are kind of an inefficient shot. Now he's hit some, but it's not the best shot. It's not the shot you want, which is why if you look at the analytics, his rim and 3 rate is down a lot. You want to be shooting ideally shots to the rim and shots from 3, and he's not getting those as much as his counterparts. Defensively, I think he's been kind of so-so. But you see with Collins, MJ Collins is a guy that is 6'4" ish athletic. very athletic wing who can get to the cup occasionally, plays good defense, I think. So that's why he's been playing. And I think Mike Young was giving him the green light because he's been so good as a freshman on both ends of the court. And I just think with Maddox, it's I think his role, ideally, this is just my opinion, I think his role would be better suited to come off the bench as more of like a spot-up shooter type, which was his role last season. Just come off, give like maybe 15, 20 minutes off the bench max, hit a few threes, be like a spot-up shooter, catch and shoot type of guy. I just don't know if the game is really built to be, a full-time starter at the HCC level. I just think he just doesn't really have that in his game.
Yeah, and it worked in spots as we went down the stretch run last year, especially in the tournament. But it seems like in sustaining that over the full course of a season, he hasn't been able to get it done in that role. And I definitely agree with you. I think kind of a guy you bring off the bench to be a spot shooter, a guy you put in the lineup when you want, your 3-point guys on the court, but maybe not that full-time starter that we've seen at the start of the year. Let's talk a little bit more. I know, we got, kids had some good minutes. Poteet had some good minutes tonight. When we look at Maddox, are we kind of going to get some of the minutes replaced in aggregate with those players, with Collins, with Kidd on the court as well? And
yeah,
I guess we'll say John Camden as well.
Yeah, actually, Camden is a good guy to bring up because I thought he played a solid game in Syracuse. He missed his first few shots, which counts. But he ended the game on a very good note. Played good defense, got a few rebounds, had some assists. I just right now Collins is a guy, or excuse me, Camden rather. Camden is a guy that hasn't played college basketball essentially ever before this season, because he was hurt last year at Memphis in his first season. So he's sort of like a redshirt freshman essentially, or I mean you might as well say true freshman because he really hasn't played much at all, or been able to practice much at all. I like him. It kind of has that like sort of small forward, power forward type role. Ideally, if he can work on a 3-point shot, that'd be great because I think that's where most of his value would lie. And talking about Kidd and Poteet, depending on what the matchups are, if you want to go big, you can put those guys in. So I think the depth at forward is fine. It's just when you're missing Maddox, obviously, and then having to play Collins as a freshman, as good as he is, you're going to kind of go through those growing pains. It's just it's a tough situation sometimes. So I think the wing depth has really hurt the Hokies this season. I know it's gotten better, but that's probably the one area where I'd look at and say the play is really holding this team back.
Absolutely. All right, let's pivot next to this guy. All right, so it took forever for him to play, and then he plays, and we're excited. We're excited against it when he played in that Syracuse game. First time we saw him, Rodney Rice. And then he gets hurt and he breaks his finger. And so for all of us, it's just like, oh my gosh. But let me just ask you, because I'm sure you reviewed a lot of his tape in recruiting, being down there, you've seen him play. How much of an impact do you think that skill set would have on this roster? Let's say he was healthy from Jump Street back in November.
Well, a lot. I mean, I will say, I didn't watch a ton of his film in high school, but just, seeing how he plays, seeing him in practice, he's a guy that's super long and athletic. He's a versatile playmaker. He can sort of, beat you off the bounce. I think, one thing about the Mike Young system is that he typically recruits, guys who can shoot, guys who are skilled over those long and athletic slasher types, which is more of the Rodney Rice model, sort of what Darius Maddox ideally would be. Rice is a guy, when you have the extra component of like a slasher who just get to the cup and score at will, I mean, that provides so much. Even if it's only in a bench role, like 10 to 12 minutes a game, I mean, that's, that provides a ton, especially because, he's a point guard. So theoretically, he would be giving Sean Padula more minutes on the bench to rest. And then you could slide him, at the one, play Couture with him, essentially, because I don't think Couture, I just don't like him, being sort of like, secondary point guard role. I don't like his his vision necessarily, or I don't think he has like the speed or the handles to be effective in that role. Obviously, he's a shooting guard. That's what he is. So dealing with Rice, you could just have him play the backup one, which would give Padula some more rest and have Couture and everybody else play in their normal positions. So yeah, it's definitely been a big loss. I mean, like you saw, Curtis, you alluded to the fact that Tech was 11-1 in non-conference play, and that was without Rodney Rice. So it's not like this team is desperately needing a guy like that, but it would provide a lot of boost, I think, in conference play, especially once he kind of gets his legs going.
Yeah, and when we look at this, we've seen so many different kind of versions of this Hokie team this year, between Couture being out and some of the forward and center rotations that they've had. What version, what lineup, what ideal play style?
What game?
Yeah,
What
we'll say
game?
that. What game showed the kind of the mold of what the Hokies need to play over this stretch run of the season, so they can potentially secure a spot in the tournament without having to rely on running the table in Greensboro.
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking about a specific game, I would say, I would say Syracuse, but that's a little bit different because of the defense they run. You kind of attack that a lot differently.
Yeah.
But just looking at the games here, I mean, Oklahoma State, I thought was actually a really impressive win because they're a team similar to Texas, very big, physical. They play good defense, not the best offensive team. But Tech won that game playing very poorly. I think they shot, what did they shoot? 45%-ish. I mean, they shot 35% from three, which wasn't very good. But they gritted out a 5-point against a good team on a neutral site. Like that's the type of win where I was like, okay, this team is legit. Like they are better than last year. Didn't quite turn out that way. But the UNC win looked good. Obviously, they didn't have Baycott, so that kind of played it. But they took another top 25 team, in my opinion, won by 8 against them. And then Duke as well. I mean, I still think Duke is good. After the Blue Devils lost to the Hokies, they beat Georgia Tech by 43. So,
Yeah.
That's a team, in my opinion, that is still kind of in that top 25 range, even though they're not ranked. But Tech was able to beat them. They shot well from 3. They played, they got enough defensive stops when they needed to, and they were really physical match. I mean, Filipowski, 7-footer who handles the ball like a guard. You got Mark Mitchell, who's 6'8", being guarded by MJ Collins. Like that's a pretty big disparity there. But they were able to get the win. So, I mean, just stuff like that. When you move the ball, and you just get enough defensive stops. I think this is a team that is never we are never going to play great defense under Mike Young. It just has to be that sort of like borderline competent level where we can get enough stops. So where the offense can give us a chance. So games like that, Oklahoma State, UNC, I mean even the Dayton game as well, is probably a much more accurate reflection of what this team can be, but it just hasn't really materialized in conference play.
All right. I got one more question before we pivot over to women's hoops. Of the losses, which one pissed you off the most? Which one, were you sitting there? I'm going to bring it because I had a little beer before we got on. Did you literally finish the game, whether you were at Castle or sitting there in your apartment, and you were just like, I want to drink because I'm freaking angry. Like, what the hell just happened? Which game?
Which game? I would say based on how it played out. Okay, this is my honest answer. It was BC. It was Boston College. Okay. Not for any particular reason except for the fact that I just hate losing to that team because we cannot beat them. We cannot beat them at that damn building. What is it? The Conti Forum?
On that damn campus. In general, we cannot win on that. By the way, did you see their win tonight?
Yeah, they beat Clemson. I mean, I don't know what it is. I mean,
it doesn't make sense.
2019 and 2021, they beat us in football. Like, it's just, I just hate losing. Like, I was so mad about it because I just hate losing to them. Like, I don't know what it is.
We lose our minds anytime we go up there.
It's true.
Yeah,
it's the lack of atmosphere.
Outside of that, just I don't know. You gotta create your own energy at a place like that. And it's just hard to do sometimes. So, but I'm sure we'll get them back at the rematch in a week or so. But outside of that, I mean, NC State was tough just because we had them at home, and I thought we played an okay game. Virginia, that was a loss to a very good team, so I'm not too worried about that. Clemson was frustrating because we just could not hit. I mean, we played defense, but we could not hit anything. We lost on the last second 3. Hunter Couture got a good look at the end, didn't go in, so that was kind of frustrating. Just felt like kind of a string of bad luck there. But yeah, man, I hate losing to Boston College. I hate it more than anything else in the world.
We all do. But by the way, we're going to talk football schedule later with you. So we were so happy when they ditched divisions, right? So happy.
Yeah.
We don't have to go to BC anymore. Damn ACC. Hey, one more year, and you're going to go on the road to BC one last time. We'll talk about that later. All right, Brian, let's go over to women's hoops, man. And let's just be realistic. This is a super talented Hokies women's team.
Yes.
Now they've dropped a couple against similarly ranked against Notre Dame. There is no shame in losing to Notre Dame. But the L against Miami, that one irritates me because it's like we know we're better than them. They lost to Duke last week. Duke's a top 20 team. There's no ill will in that. But What's the realistic ceiling, in your opinion, under Kenny Brooks this year? How far can this team go?
Yeah, so when it comes to postseason basketball, I try not to talk in terms of ceiling just because I know that the tournament is so random. And so I don't want to define success or failure based on, very specific individual outcomes. I will say that if I'm just judging based on talent, like if I were to run like 1,000 simulations of this season in some sort of computer model, I think this team absolutely has the talent to go to the Sweet 16, and I think they could make the Elite Eight. Now, Final Four is a different ballgame because the talent distribution in women's basketball is really skewed much more so than men's, sort of at the top. Like you got obviously the UConns and the South Carolinas. Like if you just look at like this, those teams are so much farther ahead than every other team. Whereas I think in men's you have a little bit more parity. So I don't want to define them too much, but if they can make a deep run in the ACC tournament, they're certainly capable. If they can get to the Sweet 16, I would say this, Curtis, they have to win the first weekend because remember in women's basketball, if you don't know, you host the regionals or whatever you call it, the first round, the second round.
Yeah.
So the 64, the round of 32, you host that at the upper seed. So if Tech's hosting that, like you got to win that. That's no excuse. You're playing at home. You're playing as probably like a 7 seed or a 15 seed. So you got to win that first weekend.
As long as nobody goes Florida Gulf Coast and makes like 600 threes or shoots 60% from three. I mean,
that was a tough matchup.
That's tough. That's a tough draw. And looking at this team, this team has shown a propensity against some of the tougher opponents they played to really play strong for 3 quarters and then kind of fade in that fourth. Have you observed anything that would kind of explain, why this team may fade a little bit down the stretch in those games?
Yeah, so I haven't paid as much scrupulous attention to the women's team as I have the men's, but I will say just from what I've kind of observed, look, Kenny Brooks will admit they're not the most athletic team. That's just not the way they're built. They're built more on like high IQ players who know the game, who can move the ball. That's kind of their MO. And I think sometimes when that happens, if you're not really like athletically dominant, sometimes you're going to run into opponents where you can kind of outwork you physically, and I think sometimes that's happened to them just in terms of the shot creation, dribble penetration to the rim. That stuff is kind of based on athleticism. So if the shots aren't falling occasionally, you're going to run into some misses. And also, Liz Kitley is a player that draws so much attention. Like she will get double teamed, she will get triple teamed sometimes. And that's a lot harder to pass out of than it looks. I mean, she's gotten a lot better with that, in terms of her IQ, her awareness on the court, knowing where the double teams are coming from. But if teams are targeting her, that means that other players have to be on the top of their game. And if they're not, then it becomes really hard because it's not easy to neutralize her. But if you're double teaming her or triple teaming her on every possession, you got to pass the ball up. That's just how it works. So it's kind of incumbent on other players to sort of step up, and sometimes it doesn't happen like the way it should. But that being said, they're still a top 20 team in the country, in my opinion. So I think they'll be fun.
I think you've already answered this next question we have. We already talked about tournament success. I mean, is the disappointment essentially not getting out of the first weekend at home?
Yes, mainly because we're hosting. Like, you got your home crowd with you, and I think ideally you'd like to see Tech be 3 or 4 seed at worst. I mean, right now they're ranked 13th, so they're going to be a 3 or 4 seed ideally at worst, just that nothing goes terribly wrong throughout the end of the year. So you're playing a 14 seed to start, and then you would get probably it would be the 6-11 winner after that. So I mean, those should be winnable games again on your home court where you're going to be favored. So definitely, I would love to see this team make it out of the first weekend.
Brian, anything else? Go ahead. Oh.
Yeah, I was gonna say I definitely agree with that. Yeah, I think the mark of failure would be back to back first round exits, especially early, especially when you're hosting. So that would definitely be a disappointment. Let's flip it over though. Let's flip it over to Hokies wrestling.
Which we know you have been attending.
Yeah. We've seen you, reporting live from the field there. So, let's run it back to NC State first. Let's run it back to NC State. 5,943 in Castle.
Yes.
Big time atmosphere for wrestling. What was that like?
Oh, it was awesome, man. I went with a bunch of friends. I went with my boy David Cunningham and a few others, and we just had a good time. I feel like wrestling is a very underrated college sport. I would say pound for pound, it is probably one of the more energetic atmospheres of any sport you will ever see. Just because the way it gets into it, when two guys are going at it and the clock's ticking down, there's the energy level, the noise level. It's just awesome, and it's something that like I haven't really experienced throughout my life because I've only been to a handful of wrestling matches. But when you get in there and you see the intensity, it's awesome, man. So it was super super good to get that win because I know NC State is sort of like the premier program. Not that Tech isn't, but like they are one of the premier programs in the ACC and in the country. So a win against them is like a win against Duke in basketball. Like it's a program defining win.
Yeah, it really is. They're one of the best in the country. I want to talk about a part of that atmosphere that night was Andy Smith, the local kid, when he secured that win. Like, you've been in Castle for basketball games, we know. Did that place shake when he got that final, when he secured the win and got that point for essentially the upset?
I don't know if it shook, but I'd say it was just as loud as if Hunter Couture hit a game-winning three in Castle. Like that, it was loud, man. And I believe he was the second to last match of the night, if I'm not mistaken about that.
Yeah, hold on.
It was definitely towards the end. I don't know exactly where it was in there,
so
but it was definitely right towards the end.
Yeah, so he got like a takedown or something to go up towards the very end, and then he was up by maybe one or two, and so the NC State player, the wrestler, was trying to get a takedown of him, kind of had him up on one leg, sort of trying to wrestle him down, and he did a great job of defense, staying upright. Time expired. So again, I don't know anything about wrestling technicalities, but you could just tell he did a great job of sealing out that match, and that was what allowed Tech to win the match ultimately. So it was just a great job by him.
Yeah, it was the next to last match, but what it did is it effectively put Tech up enough with Hunter. Hunter Kataka lost, but that was an expected loss.
Yes.
One of my fraternity brothers, David Fuqua, I've mentioned him before on here. He wrestled at Longwood College. He is my go-to on wrestling. Literally, I am seriously, if he feels like it's going to be tough for him, he's a CPA. I'm seriously, when we go to nationals, we might have him on for 15 minutes because he knows enough about it. And me and him had a conversation after Bryce and Anna absolutely destroyed a top 10 wrestler. And I said, does Bryce have a chance? And he says, yeah, because the guy that won at 157 went to 165. And he says 157 is not as stacked. He says Bryce Adana has a legitimate shot to win a national title. And when we say that, I think Sam Latana does. Definitely Makai does. And it's excitement with something like that. I mean, even with the upset by Pitt, and it sucked, and we came out the gate and got pinned, but, what's the overall community there? I mean, is it similar to football and basketball where the community is behind this program?
Definitely, you can sense it. I mean, if you look at the growth of the program in the past, 5-10 years, it's been pretty good to watch. I know, back in the 2000s, Tech was horrible at wrestling. They were talking about cutting the program. So to see where it's come from where it was is pretty amazing. I know they've funneled a lot of money with the SERTC, the Southeast Regional Training Center, help guys, practice and all that stuff. So they've had the financial backing of organizations like that. So I think they just got, the infrastructure to really win at a high level. I just can't wait to see what they can do, they can do in the future.
Yeah, I mean, we started following, I shouldn't say following Hokie football, but attending a lot of Hokie football, other Hokie events in the 2000s. And definitely in that era, it was definitely an afterthought. Wrestling wasn't really even given any sort of credence from a sports perspective at Virginia Tech athletics. So the fact that it's built that much of a reputation that quick is really impressive. And I love that the community's really kind of embraced that and jumped on board.
Yeah, it's great to see. And I think it's anytime you get to the national prominence that quickly. And when it's on television, which the ACC could do a better freaking job of, because last time we were on here, I ranted. I don't understand how Cornell, Virginia Tech was not on the ACC network. It was literally the number 7 and the number 8 wrestling schools in the country going at it. And instead, it was a freaking 30 for 30 right there at 7 o'clock. And it's just terrible production. But, Give me a few more drinks in me, and I'll really go off on the ACC network.
Yeah, we'll break out the Spurtle tapes and just lay them out.
All right, Sheldon, hang on with us here. Before we get into some more fun topics tonight, we are going to take a quick pause for a message from our digital partners.
As we take a quick break, we'd like to tell you about getting your free website report from our digital partner, Grassroots Digital Marketing Studio. They'll tell you how your website ranks on Google, on-site SEO, and social media. No commitment to buy anything. You can get your free report by visiting grassrootsdigitalstudio.com/free-website-report. Now back to the episode.
All righty. So, Sheldon, thanks for staying on with us for the rest of the time, and we're going to get into some Hokie football. We are the Boundary Corner. We are a Hokie football podcast. It's fun to talk the other stuff. We love it. We love having guests like you on. You mentioned David Cunningham, who's been on numerous times. We thought about Brave. You think we should bring David for the December episode one time, Ryan?
You gotta do it. You gotta do it.
Yeah, we got to get David drinking some bourbon with us.
Exactly. All right, but let's talk football and let's talk portal, because since the last time we come here, there was the end of the portal and there was some movement in the last few days. And sort of the big move I did not see coming. I don't think Brian saw coming, but maybe you did, Shelton, was Keyshawn King enters the portal. You know, King coming off of, solid season, probably the best he'd looked since being at Tech. Including his freshman year, over 400 yards rushing, 100 yards receiving. That is our coach, friend Robbie Compton. Let's let Sheldon start with it, Brian. When did you see this coming? Did you hear anything, or were you shocked that he decided to enter the portal?
No, I was very surprised. I did not see that coming at all. I thought King obviously had a good season for us last year, kind of a breakout year. Finally, he was healthy. Like he was kind of in the doghouse during the Fuente era, for reasons that maybe somewhat justified, maybe not. But he's also battling with injuries, and so to see him have a breakout year like this was pretty awesome. I think I don't like him as an every down type of back. I think he's just too small for that type of role. So I'm guessing maybe he saw kind of the writing on the wall. He saw the transfers coming in. I just felt like he wasn't really going to get the carries that he wanted. I'm not, trying to project on him, but that's just, kind of how it goes most of the time. So a surprising move, but, in the long run, if what people were saying about this incoming back from NCNT is true, I think it's not going to be the biggest deal in the world, because we got some studs at running back.
Yeah, and we were talking about that because if you're looking at, you got Thomas, you got now Tootin come in, who we're going to talk about in a second. Keyshawn King kind of becomes that more change of pace back. He's also probably getting pressed for some carries by Bryce Duke, who can kind of do similar type things, and maybe coming into his own in terms of, being a little bit more durable than King has shown in his career. So when you kind of put all those pieces together, it kind of makes sense for him to maybe look at another opportunity. But let's go ahead and flip it over. Let's talk about Bayshul Tootin.
Absolutely.
Stud coming out of NCAT. I mean,
stud, top 15 in the portal, ranked by On3. He is the 15th ranked running back in the portal, ahead of some guys, that played it ahead of Kobe Pace, or right with Kobe Pace. It went from Clemson to UVA. The Penn State transfer. Where did it go? I'm on a new computer, so this is a pain in the butt. It doesn't do what I want to do yet. The Kevon Lee from Penn State. Efforting. Yeah. Justin William Thomas that went from Tennessee to Cal. And coming out, nothing. A&T was his only showable offer on 247. He's up out of Paulson, New Jersey, 5'11", 195. But, I mean, you look at the tape and what he did at A&T last year, stat-wise, I love the move.
Yeah, and I mean, I watched some tape on the kid. I mean, he does a little bit of everything. He can catch some balls out of the backfield, make guys miss some space. Really good at finishing runs. Has that next gear when he gets to the second level, third level of the defense, where he can kind of pull away for the big runs. So kind of does a little bit of everything for us. I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do a little bit in the spring to kind of get a better feel of what he's going to do in this offense.
Do you know if he enrolled early, Sheldon?
That I do not know. Yeah, I'd have to punt on that.
Hold on, I'm doing it right now. What were you about to say? I'm sorry, I cut you off. My apologies.
No, I was wrapping it up, so
Yeah,
you're
just kind
good.
of echo what. Yeah, just echo what Brian's saying. I read French's film review on the key play. You know, he's obviously physical. He's got some speed. He's elusive. I basically the sense I got reading that piece was like, this is not a guy that should be playing at the FCS level. Like he is a legit Power 5 running back. So I think he kind of adds a lot to that room. And like you said, you know, one of the top ranked transfers, and you add to that Allie Jennings, who I believe, according to On3, was the top ranked transfer wide receiver. So you add those two guys. I mean, that's a pretty good transfer class. Like I know Bill Connolly, who does the SP Plus rankings for football. He said Virginia Tech's transfer class was super impressive. So coming from a guy like him, like that's got to be high praise.
Absolutely, and he also was talking about the return production on top of those transfer portal guys. He's got us. He's talking about us. Which, you know, I'm trying to temper the expectations.
We still got to see what all the pieces look like together. So that's why we're tempering expectations. But we actually have some pieces moving into the season, whereas last year it was kind of like we got to hope a lot of things happen. We got to hope a lot of things happen right, and it didn't for us. But I feel like we at least have pieces that are in place. Let's see if the coaches can get the scheme to where they can take advantage of those, and let's see these guys go out there and cook a little bit.
Absolutely. But speaking of getting to the season, before we do that, you got to go through winter workouts, and clearly that is now on display. Social media team doing a great job showing the guys, showing the workouts. And then they started coming out with the little recognition every week in the winter workout tough athletes. And thus far, Johnny Garrett, Jalen Stroman, Norrell Pollard, and Jaden Keller have essentially received the awards. Brian, I'll let you lead. Who are you happiest to see on this list of essentially crushing the winter workouts?
Can I hedge? Can I give you 1A, 1B?
There is no 1A, 1B. You got.
All right, screw it. Johnny Garrett.
I knew he's going off.
So why do I say Johnny Garrett? Because we need tackle help. If Johnny Garrett can get to a point where he is at least pushing Parker Clements coming into 2023, I feel a whole lot better about the offensive tackle situation than I felt last year, because I feel like we'll at least have three legitimate guys that can at least give you something. That can at least be that starting caliber player. Whether they're going out there and beating the world, I don't know if we'll get to that point this year or not. I don't think we will, but I just want to see competent offensive line play, consistent offensive line play, because we didn't see that a whole lot last year. So if Johnny Garrett can get to that point and push for a starting role in 2023, that'll be a big step forward. So seeing him getting some recognition is a good start to that offseason.
All right. What about you, Shelton? Who are you? Yeah, we do need dogs up front. Who are you excited to see on that list, sort of already making an impression on winter workouts?
I would say Keller between the ones you mentioned. I mean, he's a stud. The Kelly Lawson's a stud. Man, that linebacker room is pretty good. I do have some inside scoop to report, if I may. My Shelton Moss insider here. So I was at PK's on Saturday night after the Hokies win over Syracuse, and Brent was in attendance. He may or may not have had several drinks, and he may or may not have used several four-letter words to describe the state of that room in a very positive connotation, I might add. But tell me, basically, between Keller, Lawson, and I believe McDonald is the third linebacker. He thinks that linebacker room could be one of the best in the country in the coming years, and I believe him. Like those guys are just awesome, man. I love Kelly's range and versatility, athleticism, the length, and all that stuff, and Keller as well too. So I'm super excited about that room.
Awesome. I love seeing all the names on here. I love your inside scoop from PK's on Saturday night after cocktails with Coach.
Yeah, he's a very candid man, by the way.
Yes. We met him when he did the tailgate out there in Richmond at Hardywood. So yeah, we definitely he definitely knows how to work a room. He definitely knows how to play loose with people that he knows he can play loose with. So I appreciate that for sure.
Yeah. Now y'all like those two. I'm gonna tell you the guy I like because it's somebody we mentioned in our Alpha Dogs episode, and that's Jalen Stroman. I told Brian, we discussed that eventually Jalen Stroman would be the leader of the D block. I see this. He is getting that way a lot quicker. We already saw him play on the field last year. He looked good in really his first significant amount of action, especially those games when he was pressed to have to move back to free safety when Shamari came down to play nickel. And now he's out here absolutely balling on winter workouts. We know the bloodline. We know his brother essentially was a leader of D block. That makes me excited. And Brian, I'll go ahead and say it too. It's also excited to see Pollard up there because we talked about how Pollard probably is going to be the leader of the defensive line this year vocally. And so when you see that, and Brent probably mentioned it last offseason, the winter workouts is where you figure out who your leaders are. You figure out who your dogs are. And when you see it's guys you know they're going to be on the field a lot, and someone like Johnny Garrett who snuck into the two deep a few times on the depth chart during the season, that's what you want to see in my opinion.
Yeah, it's definitely a big step forward, I think. So, and we talked about it. We talked about it in the last episode, the Alpha Dog episode. We were like, these are the guys that are going to need to step up in the offseason. It's nice to see three names that we mentioned in that episode already being recognized. And then it's nice to see kind of that dark horse in Johnny Garrett taking a big step forward. And hopefully it's not just something that's, a workout warrior type situation that we're going to start seeing that production carry over to what happens on the field.
Absolutely. All right, a couple other notes. Fontel Mine got paid. He got paid a lot.
Well deserved.
Well deserved. The man has ate the 804 for lunch and dinner, and he's doing some good work, laying some foundation out in the 7572. Gets a big bump from 150K up to 425. I like it. I mean, and when we look at the movement in the footprint in terms of wide receiver coaches, that's also happened. It was both warranted and needed.
Yes, it was.
Yes. Look, you got to pay coaches if you want to have a good football team. I mean, I talked, last year in a feature piece I did for the Key Play, I talked about how Tech fell behind sort of during the 2010s in terms of their infrastructure, their financial backing of the program, and one of those areas was coaching salaries. I mean, we just weren't investing in coaching salaries as much as we should have been, and so to see that kind of change those last couple of years where we invested in this new staff. You give Fontel Mines, a guy who's been doing a great job recruiting, a 300% raise or whatever it is. Like that shows commitment, and I'm really excited because it shows that they're committed to having him here. And I also think with wide receivers, like that's an important position because that's kind of how it's such an integral part to the offense. Like you got to get those studs here and kind of open up the passing game if you want to have a functional offense. So it's a great thing for Fontel. Obviously happy for him and certainly happy for Virginia Tech.
Absolutely. And to the point on that case about the needing good wide receivers, it looked like they identified that after the season, and quickly, obviously, the three guys in the portal with pretty quick moves, which I think us as a fan base are very excited about. And I have a feeling, especially we know the Ali Jennings connection, we know how much he had probably in getting him here as, like you said, a top rated on three guy. So that was huge, and he did deserve it. He's busted his ass. He's done great recruiting here. He's starting to put the wall around Richmond to where it's now he's getting everybody here. It's can he get the next step? Can he get those top 5, top 10 guys in the greater Richmond region? And this year, we'll see.
He has the opportunity.
Yes. He does have the opportunity this year.
Yes. And one thing to add to that real quick. Obviously, we know Virginia Tech's offense was terrible last year, but the fact that Fontel could convince a guy like Ali Jennings with just eligibility left to come play for him, I think speaks volumes to his recruiting. Look, obviously, recruiting is all about selling players on a vision. And so I think what you're kind of seeing is like these coaches can sell players on what the future is going to look like, even if they're not necessarily part of it. So I think that speaks volumes to their recruiting ability.
Yeah, because Jennings would have had a lot of opportunities elsewhere. He didn't have to come to a situation where Tech is coming off one of its worst offensive seasons, at least in recent history, if not in overall. We had to go back 15 years at least to really have any sort of comparable metric to look at in terms of offensive output. So the fact that he was able to sell that, the fact that the other offensive coaches were able to kind of put that together with what they were doing with a big push for drones, which seems like very calculated well before we knew it was, what was going down with that. They had a vision, and they had targeted guys that they really wanted to pursue, and then they put it together. And we now have an offense that we can at least say, all right, we've got some talent. Let's see how we can put all the pieces together, and if we can make that click a little bit.
Absolutely. If everybody doesn't know already, spring game April 15th, 3 p.m. Shelton, I'm assuming you'll be there.
Work schedule permitting, yes.
Work schedule permitting. Brian, you're making plans, right?
Oh yeah, I'll be there.
Okay.
No doubt. Book it.
I'm a coin flip. I don't know yet. We've got kid stuff going on, and anytime there's a lot of kid stuff going on, I usually have to lay on it because as much as I want to go to the spring game, I'm going to a game this year, so I'll lay on the grenade and lose spring game. Something interesting ACC Network is doing this year. They are not. I don't think they're showing any game live because there's so many on the same days that are overlapping. All of them are going to be on extra, and then they're going to show them, I believe, the subsequent days. So if you guys are looking to catch it after you both go there and watch the game, do that.
Yeah, so I think what they were trying to avoid is what they had last year, where they were having like spring games played at night and shit like that. They were essentially saying it'll be on ACC Network Extra if you want to watch it live, program by program, and then if not, if you just get the network, then you'll see it when it airs, re-airs, whatever, 1 day, 2 days later.
Right.
And it makes sense from a scheduling standpoint because that scheduling last year was a little bit bonkers. I mean, we got both screwed in terms of the day, but I think we came out okay in terms of the time.
Yeah.
But, it's tough. So I'm glad they went to this model this year.
But once again, the ACC doesn't know how to schedule shit. They don't. Like you've got Duke playing a super early spring game every year. It's like there are 4 weekends in April that you could schedule these, and you could get this shit done. Anything you want to add? Because it sounded like you were coming behind me, Sheldon, with something.
No, what they're going to do is show a documentary about Wake Forest's 1964 basketball team.
Hit the rim shot there. By the way, we got Robbie says he's going to try to go, Brian.
All right, so Robbie, you're riding with me, man.
Birthday. Well, you gonna drive to North Wilkesboro, get him, and then go up? He's gonna have a shorter drive than you.
Meet me at Jason's. Meet me in Roanoke.
There you go. Meet me at Jason's in Roanoke. And our buddy LeVar is going as well. But let's flip it, Brian. Let's talk one last piece before we close out tonight. Let's talk about the ACC schedule was released yesterday. Best thing about the Hokies schedule was we knew who our first 4 opponent was based on the other leagues already having their schedule set. And, we lead off with ODU on the 2nd, Labor Day weekend, Purdue at home on the 9th, and then back-to-back road games at Rutgers and Marshall as the first 4. And, subsequent, everybody saw and everybody's seen it now from last night. So I'll throw it to you guys. Sheldon, let's go with you. What's the toughest 4-game stretch of this season?
Toughest 4-game stretch? Well, let me pull it up real quick. I would say once you start conference play, I would say let's go September and October. So Pitt, Florida State, Wake Forest, Syracuse. Right. That's Pitt. I never liked the matchup with Pitt. They've got a big physical defensive line. We don't play them very well. Obviously last year being a primary example. Florida State's on the road and they're getting things going, Mike Norvell. So that's gonna be really tough. I don't anticipate a game like 2018 where they fumble the ball 6 times and we recover every single one of them. So and then you got Wake Forest. Now Wake is interesting because they're losing Sam Hartman, but they have Mitch Griffiths, who was his backup last year. I saw him in the VMI game, his first game of the season. Actually played pretty well. I think he's got a good arm. There's going to be some sort of drop off there. But with Clausen, I trust him to kind of get the most out of his offensive guys. So, that's a game where it's like, you kind of got to be on your toes a little bit. And then Syracuse kind of probably started off good last year. I think they were 5-0, tapered off towards the end. But they're a team that, you got to take seriously. So that's going to be a tough stretch. Those games in October, that's really tough.
Yeah, I was looking at the schedule. I agree with you in terms of the 4-game stretch. It's got to be those first 4 to open ACC play. And then looking at the schedule as a whole, we really have a lot of. I mean, outside of Clemson, is there really any sure thing in the ACC? Like I feel like there's not. I feel like Florida State's probably the closest because they're not retooling as much as say an NC State, who also has probably a pretty good roster as well, but they're not retooling as much as they are. But just looking at it top to bottom, I mean, Pitt's bringing in obviously a new quarterback that is familiar with ACC play, but at the same time is unfamiliar with the system. Maybe getting them early in conference play might be working in our favor, but it's still, a month into the season. Who knows with that? FSU, are they back? Is FSU back? I think this is the season that kind of maybe answers that question. As you said, you already talked about Wake breaking in a new quarterback. Can Syracuse defense hold up enough without having an elite rushing attack or an elite rusher, I should say? We'll see there. Louisville, first year under Brom. BC is kind of a clusterfuck and they're retooling. They're probably the only unsure thing.
But it's at freaking Chestnut Hill, damn it.
It is at Chestnut Hill, so they've got that in their corner. NC State is going to be playing with a new quarterback, but they're still going to be a good team. They're still going to be good on defense. They are losing their most of their linebacking core though, so that's something to keep an eye on. And those are the big time playmakers. And then you've got UVA that may be edging towards dumpster fire, maybe. Right. But they were much improved on defense last year, so we'll see if their defense takes another step where they can kind of, take some time to figure it out on offense. They may be at that point of the season. But there's so many question marks with just about every team not named Clemson and maybe Florida State in this conference.
All right. I'm going to say I agree with 2 of the 4 y'all chose as the toughest 4-game stretch. But I'm going to go this. I think it's Rutgers, Marshall, Pitt, and Florida State. There's 3 road games in 4 weeks, and then you got to play Pitt, to Shelton's point, playing that big defensive line. Rutgers is Greg Schiano. We know they are going to play an ugly brand of football. Everybody, even though it was Kyle Flood, his protege, everybody remembers the damn Champs Sports Bowl in Orlando back in 2012 and what an ugly game that was. So you're going to get an ugly game up there with a defensive-minded head coach. Then you got to go on the road to Marshall. And they are going to be similar to ODU and anybody else we've faced in state or a close proximity in the last 5 years. They are going to be so up for that game. They are going to probably be sold out, just probably an insane atmosphere for them. Then you got to flip around. Then you got to play Pitt. Then you got to go to FSU. And I also put that stretch because that is also a stretch where it could really make or break the season. Because if you screw up and lose the Rutgers or the Marshall game, which is very, very probable, you could be going into the Pitt game 2-2, or maybe even 1-3. And then it's just like, okay, well, now you've got to beat Pitt at home and look at the rest of the schedule. And that's kind of where I sit. That's why I consider it tougher than the other ones, because at least we're getting a Thursday night and off a bye week with Syracuse. At least Sam Hartman isn't playing. And I know you saw the kid play Shelton versus VMI, but at least it's not them at their best. We know Clawson's a good coach, but it's not them at their best.
It's not them with a 3+ year starter.
Exactly.
Yeah.
and tons of weapons all over the place, or Boogie, or really good defensive players. All right, let me flip this, and I feel like this is just it is what it is. What's going to be the best home game this year?
Sheldon, I'll let you lead off on that one.
I want to go to that.
Best home game this year?
ODU, Purdue, Pitt, Wake, Syracuse, and State.
Man, I would say I'd probably go State, just because I think they're a good team. So if you're maybe a top 25 team coming into Lane Stadium late in the season, you can stretch off a few wins, go 6-4 before that. It'd be a big win for us. That's a game where maybe if they come in with like an 8-2 record and Pride can beat them, it's like, okay, now we're back as a program. So I think that's a potentially a very big opportunity for us.
All right, Brian.
Yeah, I'm gonna go Pitt, just because of the history, just because of its ACC opener. I think there's a lot that's going to be kind of riding on that in terms of getting off to a good start in the ACC this year. So I'm going to go Pitt. I could definitely make a case for NC State and Purdue. The only reason I lean away from Purdue because they're replacing their coach. We don't really know what caliber of a team that's going to be. But it's early in the season, so there's always that kind of hopium. There's always that hype. So if they win their first game and come into Lane, especially after the season they had last year, there's going to be some hype and build up behind that game as well. But I still, just because of the history, just because of the ACC opener, and just because it's a team that I think we need to win because we haven't historically done that well against them in recent years. So I think Pitt's going to be the big game.
Yeah, it's a good barometer for sure.
It's a good barometer for sure. I'm going to disagree with both of you because regardless of who it is, anytime there's a Thursday night Lane Stadium game, it's the special game. Now, what the hope is, we're going into that game playing really well because we do have a bye week leading up to it after the Wake Forest game. So it's that extra hype because let's just call it what it is. If they could go into that game with 2 losses after 7 games and be 5-2, can you think about coming after the Wake Forest game and how people would be talking? Hey, we're 5-2, we're playing well, we chance to lock up a bowl bid right here on Thursday night, where so many special moments have happened in the history of this program. So many special moments. And Sheldon, you're young, and this is the great part about having your hair is how young you are. It's like the Corey Moore game forever entrenched in our generation. I think someone like your age, do you remember the Darren Evans game? Or were you too young? Darren Evans versus Maryland when he legitimately trucked the safety. I mean, he.
Oh yeah, that was before my time. Yeah.
Okay, that was before your time. I gotta remember how young you are.
I'm waiting for my time, man. I'm waiting for my time.
This is your moment. There you go. Tech goes in 7-0 and squashes Syracuse 63-7. Yes. And then you have the moment for Thursday night. Yeah, but
I'd love to see us blow out a team again. That'd be nice.
I miss those days. I miss 2016 and just absolutely dump trucking Carolina. Just dump trucking that ass 55-10. And it seemed like Ricky Walker's everybody scoring a touchdown. It was just like, God, I miss those days. All right. Get off the high here. Toughest place to play this year. You already know mine is Chestnut Hill. Florida State's going to be loud and choppy. Louisville's going to be banging. Chestnut Hill, early November when it's going to be like 23 degrees because they're going to somehow put that game at ACC Network at night, and it's going to be the red bandana game. Brian?
Oh, it's definitely going to be the red bandana game, and I'm still going to lean away from that just because I feel like BC is just – they're going to be a notch – below where they were overall talent than they were last year, even though I think they probably fill in some of the holes that roster had last year. I think they're probably better on the offensive line this year than they were last year, but I still think overall they're going to be a notch down. I'm looking at FSU. I think that's kind of maybe the low-hanging fruit here, but I'm going to take it. That game's going to be hype. There's going to be some swag surfing. There's going to be some chops. There's going to be a whole lot of noise, and I think it's going to be a big one. It's going to be a tough one, but if we can go down there and do some business, then especially if we take care of business the weeks before, there's going to start being some conversations. So that's mine.
Sheldon?
Yeah, it's got to be Florida State, man. They've got a stud quarterback coming back. They've got a good head coach, and we combine that with the atmosphere they have. I know people talk about BC, but it's like when you're playing a really good team in a packed environment, like that's really tough. So I got to go FSU.
All righty. One more thing before we kind of close it up here tonight. Let's grade this schedule. Let's kind of look at it because, I mean, Florida State's obviously the big one. Like, that's the game we're putting on it. But like what you mentioned earlier, Brian, a lot of questions with a lot of these teams. A lot of questions. I mean, even on those, those 4 out of conference games, a lot of questions there. Where do we put this? In terms of who we're playing, where we're playing them, when we're playing them, where would you grade it, Shelton?
In terms of, I guess, if you were talking about excitability, I mean, I would say C personally. I know that sounds harsh. Maybe C minus. Like, look, it's just Purdue and Rutgers and Marshall. Like, how am I supposed to? And ODU, man. Like our marquee home game is what? Purdue. I mean, like State. It's just. I don't know.
State or Pitt.
Like our marquee non-conference game is Purdue. Like that's yeah. I mean, come on. Like I just can't get excited for that. Sorry. Like I hope we win all the games, man. But it's just like this is not a schedule that gets my my juices flowing.
It definitely doesn't blow the skirt up. When you look at it, there's no real. We were kind of, I think, grasping for a marquee home game, right? We had to.
We were hoping
we had to tie some other things into it to really kind of build up a marquee home game. And when you look at it, you got Purdue. It's a solid out of conference opponent, but it's not anything.
Brian, we lost your mic. Live streaming here. Fun parts of it. Not back.
No.
Welcome to the world of
Yo.
There you go.
All right.
We will take that out in post-production.
Damn mic crashed for whatever reason. All right, so
the mic hates you, dude. You just
it does, man. Well, the mic is fine for it's something in my dock that it keeps crashing the driver, and I have to. Even when I've got everything like that also uses the mic turned off, it sometimes still happens. Usually it doesn't, but unfortunately, it is what it is. All right, so I was talking about Purdue. I mean, Purdue is a decent out of conference opponent, but it's not anything to like really get excited about. And I feel like that's kind of what this schedule is. Other than maybe FSU, there's a lot of decent games, but there's nothing that really you kind of circle on the schedule and say, I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, I'm with y'all. It's a C. It's a C to maybe because we get Florida State, it's a C plus schedule, but it really isn't. And I think for us, I think if it was Florida State at home, Wake Forest on the road, it would probably get to the B category.
At least give you a B minus. You got a marquee home game.
Well, just hold your horses because next year, have y'all looked at next year yet?
I have, but it's been so long I couldn't tell you.
Clemson is a home game in 2024. Away games at Duke and Carolina. It's also here. The out of conference opponent is Vanderbilt. That's in Nashville. Which I know a lot of people have already started talking about Nashville on Labor Day weekend.
Yeah.
Sign me
NFL
up.
NFL Stadium, I believe,
NFL Stadium, yeah.
Sign me up.
It's
called Jason. He knows all the good spots.
He does know all the good spots. Man, he used to work down there. But the next season probably ranges that B because you get both Clemson and Louisville at home. You play 3 Carolina schools on the road. Wake, Duke, and you get Carolina. So I think eventually we're going to see a good balance out where you're going to have some of those C pluses, but you're going to eventually get some A minuses too. All right, Brian, it is 10:45. Has anything broken since we started? Anything on Twitter?
I haven't seen anything. I mean, Lakers got to win, so.
No comment. Anything? You seen anything, Sheldon?
Nope.
All righty. Before we wrap it up, the gentleman we talk about all the time is our music guy, Jason Long. Jason Long is a teacher down in the city of Roanoke. He teaches at Woodrow Wilson Middle School. Jason is also the assistant wrestling coach down there. And this week, by the hair of their chinny chin chins, his team won the city championship. So we want to shout out our buddy Jason Long. Roanoke City champion, wrestling for the middle school. You know, Jason's always been nice enough to let us use his music all these years. So, and he's been our boy forever, man. I've known Jason since the 5th grade. Brian's known him
I've known him since middle school. So yeah, we go back.
Way back. So it's awesome for him. I know he always tells us usually a few of his wrestlers always head down when the Hokies are wrestling, and apparently he's got one kid that he doesn't think is going to wrestle in further. He's going to potentially play football. He's been invited to some camps, and we mean invited. He got the no, we're paying your way to this camp. So maybe if he commits to Tech, we'll get him. But Shelton, we thank you for coming on tonight, and that is going to wrap up this episode of the Boundary Corner podcast, brought to you by Main Street Pharmacy in Blacksburg. I'm Curtis Wilson.
I'm Brian Siegler.
Visit our website. He's Shelton Moss.
Yep.
Visit our website, boundarycornervt.com, to listen to all of our episodes. While you are there, don't forget to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Subscribe on our YouTube account, which is continuously growing. Use your favorite podcast source, Spotify, Amazon, and Apple Podcasts. As long the man who is the coach of the Roanoke City Middle School wrestling team, Jason Long, play us in, play us out. Check him out on his website, jasonlongmusic.com, where you can link to all of his music on Apple, Spotify, and his YouTube and Facebook pages. He is not doing any live events as of right now. I think it's too damn cold for him to go to the farmer's market and freeze his butt off. Don't blame him, plus the coaching gig. We thank you always for listening out there. And as always, let's go!
Hokies!